Whether it's a pro studio or a man cave, speakers, specifically studio monitors, are such a weird thing to talk about. I mean, I guess if you want to have a studio setup, you need monitors and not just speakers, because that's what all the pros do, right? Also, you need to have mains and references because, again, pros. This is a rabbit hole I've gone down so many times, testing out different monitors only to realize I hated them 6 months later for absolutely no reason, but also making my own acoustic panels to treat the room so I could hear the monitors the way they were supposed to be heard. Gotta be honest, when it comes to this stuff, I really don't know the science. I've probably read all the same things as you. Studio monitors recreate what you're hearing more accurately, room treatment helps you hear more accurately, blah, blah, blah. Well, I've never really been able to confidently say how much of a difference these things made, but what I can tell you is that switching to the iLoud speakers by 𝗦𝗍𝗔𝗡 did make a noticeable and also a very comparable difference. Okay, that probably sounds like an ad read, but I'm being serious here. Let me explain. About a year ago, I was having some serious issues with my studio monitors. I don't want to put the brand on blast, but I'm sure you can figure it out if you have seen enough of my videos, but they just didn't sound good. And I know that's a really subjective thing for me to say, but what I mean is that they had a lot of clarity and I felt like I could hear a good amount of detail in the music, but they just weren't enjoyable to use. Like at all. I was complaining about this to one of my friends who happens to work at 𝗦𝗍𝗔𝗡, and he was like, "You want to try out our iLoud MTMs?" And I had no idea what these speakers were at the time, or even that 𝗦𝗍𝗔𝗡 made speakers, but I know that I've genuinely liked everything I've tried from 𝗦𝗍𝗔𝗡, so I said sure and he sent a pair to me. No strings, he just believed in them. Those speakers kind of blew my mind. The big deal with the MTMs, at least for me at the time, was that they came with built-in DSP that allowed you to calibrate them to your room with the included microphone. This would make sure that the speakers were making up for any potentially problematic frequencies you have in your room. Initially, I thought, I have room correction, why would I need this feature? But it turns out that I actually did have some pretty big issues, specifically in the bass frequencies. Always in the bass frequencies. Those things didn't leave my desk until I upgraded to the much more expensive precision monitors, which I can go into why I did that in another video, but suffice to say the iLoud MTMs were my jam for quite a while. Now, there are several things I really liked about them, as well as a few things I didn't like that I will get into here in a minute, but that leads me to today's video. 𝗦𝗍𝗔𝗡 has released an MK2 version of the MTM speakers with some pretty big upgrades. For transparency, IK did send me these speakers to try out. I did not pay for these myself. You can do with that information whatever you feel is necessary. MTM MK2 speakers feature improved speaker drivers, improved off-axis response and in-room response, improved power efficiency in SPL. SPL stands for sound pressure level, by the way. I had to Google that. Higher onboard processing power, improved DSP, which allows the MK2 MTMs to operate at 96 kilohertz and use the same algorithms as the higher-end precision monitors, giving them improved room correction over the previous generation. And it also now works with the 𝗦𝗍𝗔𝗡 software the more expensive iLoud precision monitors come equipped with. These are priced to replace the current line of iLoud MTM monitors at $799 for the pair and $399 for the single monitor. Does anyone ever buy a single monitor? Keep in mind that if you do buy a single monitor though, it does not come with the ARC microphone, which you need to calibrate the speakers. Now, what is the 𝗦𝗍𝗔𝗡 software and why is it a big deal? To be clear, you don't need the software to use the room correction that is built into the speakers, but in addition to the normal room correction that's built in, 𝗦𝗦monitor allows you to do things like emulate other speakers, even some of the classics like the NS10s you always hear the pros raving about. You can also mute the monitors, dim them, or even toggle the room correction on and off, which is just kind of crazy to hear. I swear after using this feature, I could hear how much I was compensating in my old mixes for the buildup in the low end I have in my room. 𝗦𝗦monitor also has a feature that allows you to assign your favorite functions to a 4-button virtual switch that you can have float on your screen in a mini window, which I find really handy when I'm mixing. That way I can quickly reference between my monitors and then the emulated monitors that I have assigned to the button. So let's check out the MK2 MTMs. I'm going to try my best to give you a demonstration, but that's notoriously difficult to do in a video with monitors. So afterwards we'll come back here and I'll tell you what I think. There you go, there you have it. This is the iLoud MK2 MTM speaker. This is the MK1. The MK2 does feel a little bit heavier, but I could be imagining that. It's not by a lot. The camera that I actually need right now died. Okay, this is the MK1. It weighs 5 pounds, 6 ounces. And here is the MK2 and my hair weighing 5 pounds, 8 ounces. Okay, so I was right. Barely. Little to no difference in them, but it is, I mean, it is 2 ounces heavy. I don't know, maybe there is a difference. The MK2 does have the little IK logo down here on the bottom, but other than that, These the control layouts look exactly the same. Everything else looks exactly the same. So it will be interesting to try these out back to back and give you my thoughts and opinions on the sonic differences. Let's get them hooked up and check them out. Okay, I'm here at my desk and I have my iLoud Precision 6s hooked up. They are on these ISO stands to eliminate any bass response traveling through the desk. That's why I have them on these stands. They also adjust them to approximately the correct height. The purpose of what I'm doing right now is I want to listen to these speakers, and then I'm going to switch over to these new iLoud MTM MK2s. We're going to calibrate them, and then I'm going to compare some mixes that I am really comfortable with on both speakers. Now, I am trying to capture the audio to the best of my ability. It's really difficult to do in studio monitor reviews, but I do have a lav mic right here, a wireless lav mic right in the middle, sort of like in the sweet spot, even though it's dropped down a little bit. I'm hoping this captures some of this. It will be in mono, just the nature of the beast. I also have my lav microphone, and then I have a shotgun microphone that is moving around on this slider back here. I'm gonna try and be as objective as I possibly can here. We're also gonna compare these to the MTM MK1s, do a little compare contrast. This is a song that I released on Spotify earlier this month. If you don't already follow me over on Spotify, I really appreciate it. Now, one of the things I really love about the Precision line of monitors is you can get this extra little switch control here. This is additional, it does not come with the speakers, but you can hook that up and you can program things. Here, let me show you. You can actually program this in 𝗦𝗏monitor. Now, you don't need the switch to use 𝗦𝗏monitor. You can actually just use this, like you can shrink this and have a digital version of it, but I just like having the actual physical control on here. And you can program these to be whatever you want inside. You can emulate different monitors, switch in between the different modes with the Precision monitors, make it sound like a 49-inch TV if you wanted to. There's a lot of really good stuff in here. Let's hook up the MTM MK2s, see what those things sound like in comparison. Okay, I have the MTM MK2s on their little stands that are on these isoacoustic stands. It's a little bit jank the way that they're set up right now, but the tweeters are roughly pointed at my ears. I haven't done the calibration yet. We do have the microphone here that comes with the speakers to do the calibration in just a second, but I just wanted to give my first impressions here. Let's do that. Okay, they sound way better than they should for a speaker their size, just like the MK1s. I love the MK1s. I love mixing on those things. I thought they were really great. They punched well above their weight class, but by comparison, just going from the Precisions to these, there's a noticeable difference in the bass response. But when we do the room correction and I adjust some of the dip switches on the back, let's see how much that changes. Okay. Okay, so this is actually a little bit different here. Holding down the calibrate button when you have 𝗦𝗏monitor open actually brings up the 𝗦𝗏monitor dialog. So in order to do this here, we're going to have to create sort of like a box around our head. So I'm gonna use this microphone here as my reference point. So that would be about position 1. And these don't have to be perfect. I tend to take probably a lot more time than I need to capture these, but we'll just capture them here. Okay, now it wants us to move the microphone to the right side of our listening position, roughly the same depth. Now we're gonna go to 0.3, and again, I'm just like sort of approximating where this is. 0.4 here. We're gonna go next, and now the calibration is done for the right speaker. Now we need to follow the same process for the left speaker as well. And one thing that I wanna point out here is there are calibration buttons on the back of the speakers, but one of the big things about the MK2 speakers is their integration in with 𝗦𝗏monitor software. So it just feels like you would want to use the 𝗦𝗏monitor software. You know what I'm saying? So well, let's go ahead and do the calibration on the left speaker here. Let's go ahead and unplug our microphone. Sit next here. Calibration's done. you can see here the correction that it made before and after on both speakers. So I had a massive dip around 100 Hertz and big build up after that, somewhere in like the 130, 140 range. Probably pretty typical. That's the way that it worked with the other speakers when I hooked them up as well. Let's just go ahead and listen to the same reference track with the speakers now calibrated, and I'll turn the calibration on and off so I can get a sense of what it did. Yeah, so in the low end, that's the most dramatic change there. It's really sculpting the low end quite a bit. I mean, there's definitely some stuff happening in the mids, but it's not as dramatic as what's happening in the low end. And with the calibration on, the low end sounds deeper, just more balanced and under control. It sounds less woofy, and as a result, it sounds more powerful, I guess I would say. There's a couple other things we can do here. If you look, there's this custom contour. We can actually go extra bottom if we want a little bit more low end in our speakers. Which is just adding some sub frequencies in, making these speakers sound much bigger than they are. You know, the original MK1 speakers really blew me away with how they sounded for their size and like what you get for the value with them. And I would say that the same is true so far with these MK2 speakers. Now again, with the 𝗦𝗏 software, one of the cool advantages is that we have this real-time program that we can run anytime, like if we're just listening to audio. It doesn't have to be in a DAW like with the ARC software. I will get into that later, but we can simulate different speakers. So if you look in here, we have by default white 90s set up. I'll let you guess what those are. Just a really cool feature. So if we want to simulate NS10s and get that sort of NS10 sound as a reference speaker without having to actually buy NS10s and without having to set them up and have them occupy more real estate, you know, it's just right there. And the thing that I found that is really cool about this is anytime I use reference monitors, they're always out of alignment. You know what I mean? They're always slightly different, and it's hard to tell because the space is different. So maybe they're slightly wider or slightly narrower, but you have to mentally compensate for that. Whereas with using something like this with, like, you know, this emulation, so to speak, the sound is coming from the same exact source. So there's no adjustment that you mentally have to make in the stereo field. Again, that's probably the biggest improvement with this iteration of speakers. I will plug in the MK1s just to do a quick comparison to see if there's any like noticeable differences between them. But so far, it seems like the 𝗦𝗏 integration is the biggest selling point. Okay, now I'm gonna close the 𝗦𝗏 software here, and I'm gonna hook up the MTM MK1s, and I have calibrated them for this same position. And I did calibrate them with the internal speaker calibration since they aren't integrated with the 𝗦𝗏 software. So I don't know how much that will affect the differences between them, but I just wanna hook them up right now and compare real quick. So let's do that. Now, if you have the ARC software, you can use it as a plugin inside your DAW, like at the end of your master bus, and you can have a lot of the same features that we just talked about, as well as some additional features that I wish were included in 𝗦𝗏. Again, I'll go over that here at the end of the video. But, you know, there's just pros and cons to each right now. Like 𝗦𝗏 is more real time. You can use it when you're listening to YouTube videos, for example, as opposed to just as a plugin inside your DAW specifically. But I digress. Let's just hear these speakers. Okay, so right away, the new MTM MK2s have a much better bass response than these ones. And these were calibrated previously for this exact position. I have the speakers set up in the same exact position. Like, nothing has really changed other than I'm using the built-in calibration on the MK1s as opposed to the X monitor software with the MK2s. And I don't want people to get it twisted. There is a great amount of low-end response in these speakers, especially for how small they are and where their price is. I am used to using a lot of speakers that are in that $500, $600 per pair range. And these speakers are much better to me because of their feature set, because of how they sound, especially for their footprint. They take up a much smaller amount of desk real estate than a lot of other speakers, and they sound incredible for all of those things considered. So I will be really curious to see how they price the MK2s, to see how competitive those are with, you know, the additional feature set, the X monitor software included integration, and then how different they sound, because they do sound quite a bit different. And I know that's not a direct apples to apples comparison because I'm using the built-in calibration versus X monitor, which X monitor is a little bit more in-depth in its calibration, making you move to the 4 different points as opposed to the internal calibration, which is 1 point and just calibrates real quick. But I feel like, I don't know why, I don't know the exact mechanism that's causing it, but the MK2s do have a much better and much clearer bass response. Okay, so after some time messing around with the new MTM monitors, this actually leads me to one of my gripes with these monitors. Let me explain. With the precision monitors, there's a control input, so you can plug in one of these little controls, which you'll probably recognize from the X monitor software. This switch allows you to save your 4 presets and use them independently from the software. And that would have been a really nice upgrade for the MTM MK2s, but with the MTM MK2s, there isn't even an input for the switch. The other small gripe I have is with the X monitor software itself. With the old MTMs, if you wanted to emulate other speakers, you could use iK's ARC software, which will work with any speaker, but it has a lot of the same functionality as X monitor, except for 2 things that I think iK should upgrade. There's a speaker emulation, or profile if you want to call it that, of a car. It's really excellent because it gives you a super exaggerated low end like you would have in a car, which allows you a very valuable reference when you are mixing. Despite having a plethora of speaker and environment emulations like 49-inch TV and X monitor, we are missing the car profile. Also in the ARC software, you can calibrate for different listening positions. So for example, if I want to have my room correction calibrated to the back of my room where I'm sitting now, I can switch to the speaker profile and do that. It would be incredible to have that functionality in X monitor and available to me at the push of a button, because one of the main drawbacks of using the ARC software is it's only available as a plugin. So that doesn't do me much good if I just want to stream music while I'm setting up my cameras, but I don't want to hear the excessive low-end buildup in the back of my room. But all in all, I think these speakers are a big improvement in the right direction, and I sincerely hope someone from iK is listening and we get an upgrade to the X monitor software soon that allows us those extra features that I mentioned. If you like this video, make sure to let YouTube know by hitting the like button. If you like what I do here, consider subscribing, or better yet, joining us on Patreon for behind the scenes and exclusive content like an early preview of my course that I have coming up soon, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.